Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and welcome to NewsX World. With just 1 week to go before Canada heads to the polls on April the 28th, voters are already turning out in record numbers for advance voting. The Liberal Party, now led by Prime Minister Mark Carney, is pulling ahead with recent polls showing them edging out the Conservatives, driven by concerns over US President Donald Trump's ongoing trade action. Carney, who replaced Justin Trudeau last month, is leveraging his global economic experience to position himself as the steady leader Canada needs in uncertain times. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, once seen as the front-runner, has had to adjust his campaign strategy as Trump's rising influence shifts the momentum. Analysts suggest Carney's calm, experienced approach is resonating with voters focused on economic stability and national sovereignty as the campaign enters its final stretch. Debates over key issues such as the national handgun ban continue to divide the leaders. Poilievre opposes further restrictions, focusing instead on illegal firearms and tougher sentencing. Carney strongly supports the ban, aiming to strengthen gun control measures, while Jagmeet Singh advocates for both restrictions and broader social investment strategies to address the root causes of gun violence. Well, as we head towards the polls in just a week's time, this is how the polls are looking a week out. And we start off with a CBC News poll, this accurate to April the 20th, the latest poll that they released. And it's a clear picture, one that we have been showing for the last couple of weeks now, and that's the Liberal Party leading slightly over the Conservative Party. The clear gap there, 43.2% for the Liberals, led by Mark Carney, compared to 38% for Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party of Canada. The New Democrat Party, of course, led by Jagmeet Singh, somebody who has played kingmaker in previous elections, looking at a much smaller vote share at just 8.3%, with Bloc Québécois at 5.9%. Mostly regional voters there from Quebec, of course. We move on now to the Liaison Strategies NEPMCC poll, which is a day older, from April the 19th. This is the latest poll that they have produced, and it's very similar numbers, almost exactly the same. 43% for the Liberal parties, then 38% for the Conservative Party. And again, the same numbers that we saw in the previous poll. Let's move on to our third and final poll of tonight. And this is showing slightly different numbers, but again, the same story overall. Liberal Party at 43.7, with the Conservatives at 46.3, showing a slightly wider margin than previous polls we've shown. The NDP in this poll, the Nanos Research CTV Globe and Mail poll that is accurate as of today, the most recent poll that we've looked at, this has the New Democrat Party at over 10%, but still outside of a chance of winning the election outright. The question remains, if this vote is close, could the NDP play kingmaker and help decide who the next Prime Minister of Canada will be? Well, we're going to speak to a guest who might be able to help us answer that question, and that's Andrew Latham, an international affairs expert who is joining us from Ottawa, Canada. Andrew, thank you very much for being here with us on this Canada election special. We're 1 week away from people heading to the polls in masses. Has the story changed from the last time we spoke? Is it anyone but Carney winning this election, in your opinion?
Well, I think you've hit on a couple of really interesting points, one of which is the better the NDP does, the worse the Liberal Party does, because it bleeds progressive left votes away from well, just away. And to the extent that they can split the vote on the left, obviously the Conservative Party will benefit from that. And it's so close that to the extent that the Bloc Québécois, the Green Party is not a player at the moment, but to the extent that the leftist parties are going to split the vote, the Conservatives are going to benefit. And it's that close that it looks like that might be decisive.
Of course, we've spoken at the start of this programme about some of the key topics. Gun laws is something that we brought up today. How important of an issue is that for the Canadian people?
You know, guns are very important. Some Canadians like to pretend that the United States and Canada are really different on the gun issue, but there are many, many, many Canadians who love their gun rights. But that's not really the issue. The issue, with respect to that, is that when you look at I know the Trumpies like to represent Canada as the place where fentanyl enters the United States and guns enter the United States. It's not true. The net movement of guns and fentanyl and illegal migrants, for that matter, are from the U.S. to Canada. So it's an issue. I don't think right now at this moment it is the decisive issue. The decisive issues are these: that Canada is suffering under the the Trump agenda, right? And that's really the big thing. It used to be, before Trump started talking about the 51st state, it was all about Canadian growth rates in terms of GDP and whatnot, and then and the cost of living and all of those really super local indigenous issues. But that's all gone away. It's all been displaced by the 51st state and Canadian nationalism and and so how that works in terms of electoral politics is this: the Bloc Québécois, it has become a Canadian nationalist party, weirdly. The Conservative Party has begun to make noises that are very, very nationalist. The Liberal Party in Canada is making noises that are very nationalist. The Green Party has disappeared altogether. And even Jagmeet Singh, leader of the Conservative Party, is now talking very much in Canadian nationalist terms. So Canadian nationalism is now the most important element of this electoral campaign.
Yes, Andrew, we know, of course, that it is just a week until the majority of Canadians head to the poll. But given this has been a shorter election period, with the snap election announced by Mark Carney with just around 5 weeks for campaigning, do you think that this means that there is still time for people to change their mind given that shorter window? Or do you think the majority of Canada has made up their mind 1 week out from the election?
Excellent question. I think most Canadians have made their minds up, and not on the basis of any kind of rational cost-benefit analysis. They're just reflexively inclined to one party or another on the basis of this this Trump business, the 51st state business. And that's, I don't think Canadians are going to change their mind on the basis of, can we possibly argue this versus that? I don't think that's the case. I think most Canadians have made their minds up. And if I were a betting man, and I'm not, but if I were, I would bet on the Liberal Party and under Mark Carney. If I were not a betting man, but if I had my way, I'm a Canadian citizen, so I could vote if I wanted to, but I don't. I would vote for the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre. I think they have a better agenda. I think Pierre Poilievre is probably better positioned to deal with the 51st state nonsense. I think Mark Carney is, in all kinds of ways, too much of a green fanatic and a technocrat, and he was a really bad governor of the Bank of England. You can ask anybody in Britain, they'll tell you that. But I think the Canadian political, I think the reflex is going to be the Liberal Party, and I think Mark Carney will be not just the Prime Minister today, but he'll be the Prime Minister tomorrow and after the election as well.
Andrew, you've mentioned the United States, and the Vice President, J.D. Vance, of course, is in India, and we have some breaking news to bring you, and that is that Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India has now welcomed US Vice President J.D. Vance and Second Lady Usha Vance and their children to his official residence in Lok Kalyan Marg in Delhi. We will be showing you now some of those visuals that we have had just coming through now of JD Vance and Prime Minister Narendra Modi there. Those conversations are set to be had, those bilateral talks amid ongoing trade tensions. Of course, these trade tensions following Donald Trump's tariffs affecting India, but also affecting other countries across the world, including Canada as well. And that has been a key talking point there. As we continue to show these visuals, I shortly will be bringing back in my guest, Andrew Latham, to talk about those impacts of these tariffs. We will just play these out, of course. Here, JD Vance on the first of 4 days where he is visiting India with Second Lady Usha Vance, who was also, of course, an American, US Indian descent, and their children as well. There, these visuals that we're seeing, Prime Minister Modi's residence, JD Vance inside ahead of these critical bilateral talks that are set to take place, if they haven't already done so, in the coming minutes, where trade will be a key point of discussion. Here, of course, the Vance family, that's JD Vance, Vice President, Usha Vance, Second Lady, and their children meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. You can see the warm embrace there. Of course, the ongoing trade disputes caused by Donald Trump's tariffs, causing shockwaves across global markets, being felt by countries across the world. Of course, in Asia, ongoing discussions reportedly being held between China and the US, but India and and the United States, those conversations will continue to happen. We won't, unfortunately, have time to come back to Canada, but as we finish looking at those images there of Narendra Modi and JD Vance, our eyes will of course turn to those conversations, but we will continue to keep an eye on the Canada election that is just 1 week away. Heading to the polls, as many Canadians will do, on the 28th of April. Who will win the election? Mark Carney, as the polls are suggesting, may lay claim to that power, but the Conservatives of Pierre Poilievre and also the NDP led by Jagmeet Singh may have something to say about it. Stay with us here on NewsX World for more of the latest international news and on the Canada election as we head towards that all-important date of the 28th of April. Until then, thank you.